The cold stones weep in silence. Moisture drips from the arched ceiling of the dungeon like a slow, steady heartbeat. A rusted iron door groans shut above, and darkness swallows the stairwell, leaving only the faintest glimmer of a tallow candle fighting the damp. A rat scurries across a booted foot. The knight does not flinch. He hasn't moved in hours. His chainmail shirt is torn at the collar, stained with blood and bile, the once proud sigil on his surcoat faded into grime. He once held a banner on the battlements, now he clutches only his ribs, hollow with ache. Outside, beyond stone and fire, the enemy's siege towers press closer, their ropes creaking like gallows nooses in the wind. But inside, hunger is the true tyrant. The bread was gone 3 fortnights ago, the salted pork a memory. Walls that once held feasts now echo with retching. They boil leather scraps, chew on candle stubs, whisper prayers to saints whose names they no longer remember. In one corner, a gaunt woman sharpens a chicken bone into a point, not for escape, but to pierce a wooden beam where the rats hide. Nearby, a boy with sunken cheeks mumbles a lullaby to his sister's corpse, her small hand still clasping a doll sewn from rags. The air reeks of sweat, rot, and quiet madness. There is no sun here, only the memory of it, the heat of midsummer feasts, the laughter in open courtyards, the scent of roasted barley and rosewater. Now replaced by mildew, the clink of mammicles, and the sound of teeth grinding against the hunger. Above them, the bells of the chapel ring for the dead. Below, those still living wonder if they've already crossed into some purgatory, a siege not just of walls, but of the soul.
It begins with a bowl, wooden, cracked, stained from years of stew and winter porridge, now filled with water and 2 shriveled carrot tops. The steward places it before the gathered prisoners like an offering to the dying. They do not fight, not yet. Hunger has not reached its teeth. It moves slowly through the bones first, softening resolve, then speech, then sight. The dungeon lies beneath the great keep of Elsendor, where once velvet drapes and polished banners line the halls. Now even the great hall above is silent, its hearths dark, its tables bare. The Lord has sealed the food vault. The grain was counted, the meat rationed. But the siege has stretched into the frost months, and now rats are hunted like venison. Among the imprisoned are debtors, deserters, and a washerwoman accused of theft. Her real crime was asking for a second ladle of soup. One man mutters endlessly in Latin, a priest once, now just a husk in a lice-infested robe. Another scratches tally marks into the wall with his fingernail. His day is a countdown to what he no longer knows. A young girl clutches her mother's belt, lips cracked and eyes rimmed red from the cold. The mother tears threads from her hem to weave a snare. There are whispers that the guards have begun trading flesh for favors, meat of unknown origin passed quietly through a grate, too tender for livestock. Outside, snow collects on the battlements. Archers sleep with fingers frostbitten to the bowstring. Inside, time grows soft, like bread left in rain. Hunger makes ghosts of them all, wandering in thought through remembered kitchens, dream-baking bread they will never taste. Some pray, some forget how. All listen for the sound of horns, not the ones of war, but of retreat. But only the wind howls through arrow slits now, and even that feels like mockery. A lantern swings in the dark, its flame dimmed by the damp breath of the dungeon. Chains clink as a boy turns in his sleep, or tries to. His ribs protrude through a tunic far too large, his hands curled like dead leaves. Across from him, a knight once praised in song now groans in delirium, mistaking the rat crawling over his lap for a messenger of God. The siege has entered its 5th month. Food stores were depleted before the frost came, and the livestock had long since been slaughtered, their bones crushed for marrow, the hooves boiled until they melted. The kitchen hearths are cold now, their soot long settled. Ash drifts like ghost dust through the halls. In the shadows, the dungeon mistress counts bodies, not to mourn them, to make space. Every morning she drags the stiffened shapes toward the stairwell, muttering psalms beneath her breath. She does not look at their faces, not anymore. Among the living, there are fewer voices. They speak less, conserving breath. Eyes grow dull, movements careful, as if sound itself might invite death. One man offered his wedding ring for a heel of moldy bread. The guard took the ring, but the bread never came. Another prisoner dug a hole into the wall behind a cot, hoping for escape, only to find a deeper chamber filled with bones, a chamber older than the siege, older than the castle. By torchlight, one woman begins to sing, a lullaby from the countryside, trembling and slow. The tune haunts the stone, floating above the living and the dead alike. In that moment, they are all children again, held by warm hands that no longer exist. Outside, the enemy waits in patience. Inside, starvation carves new history into every rib, every silent scream, every whispered name scratched into the wall. A single torch sizzles against the damp wall, casting the long shadows of men who no longer speak. In the deepest corner of the dungeon, a mother wraps her child in the remnants of a wool cloak, whispering the tale of St. Bridget's fire, how it never went out even in the coldest night. But here, even stories flicker out. Once there had been rations, barley, dried apples, but the last of them went to the captain's table 3 days ago. The lower quarters eat dust and memory now. They scrape lichen from stone. They boil parchment scrolls to sip the ink. Their stomachs are hollow bells, tolling endlessly with need. A man named Corwin, once a baker, chews stones to remember the taste of crust. His gums bleed, but he does not stop. A scribe etches a final confession onto the wall with a broken nail, each letter a plea to be remembered. The ink ran out weeks ago. Blood must suffice. Children who once played in the inner court now lie curled like roots against the stone, too weak to cry. An old soldier uses his belt to tie shut the pantry door, not from invaders, but from those within. The scent of desperation is stronger than the scent of death. Outside, smoke rises from the enemy's camp. Their fires glow like false dawns. Inside, even time begins to rot. No one knows what day it is, only that it has been too many. Above them, the castle chapel remains locked, its bells silenced, its wine sealed in sacred casks. Salvation has become something mythic, like dragons or summer. The mother finishes her story. The child has stopped breathing. She wraps the body tighter as if warmth might return, and begins the tale again. It begins with silence, so deep it swallows the breath, the kind of silence that grows thick inside stone, a dungeon sealed beneath the east wing of Castle Thorn, far from the light of the snow-streaked courtyards above. Frost creeps along iron bars, a single rope hangs from a ceiling beam, frayed at the end, not for escape, but remembrance. The siege began in autumn, now midwinter has arrived. Supplies meant for 1 month stretched across 3, and finally broke. In the high towers, the nobility burned tapestries for heat. In the depths below, the forgotten ones lie on rotting pallets, chewing leather laces and boiled feathers. Among them is a midwife named Elda, imprisoned for speaking out during the harvest festival. She counts days by plucking threads from her sleeve. 27 are tied in knots. She hasn't added one in 4 days. Her belly aches, not from hunger alone, but from the memory of fullness.
the roasted lamb of last summer's wedding, the honeyed oats of harvest morn. There are no candles left, only oil lamps, and even those sputter. They take turns guarding the flame. Light has become more precious than food. One prisoner suggests they eat the dead. Another weeps, not in horror, but in agreement. Above them, arrows fall like rain on the battlements. Below, no one moves quickly. Hunger has made them slow, reverent, skeletal. Elda holds a child's rag doll, left behind during a raid, and rocks it gently, though no child remains. Someone coughs. The rope overhead sways slightly. Then, stillness. In a place without time, without seasons, without sound, even sorrow becomes a kind of ritual. Wind howls through the cracks of the stone walls, carrying with it the scent of smoke and scorched barley. Somewhere above, the enemy catapults have breached the granary, but in the dungeon below, the prisoners do not hear it. Their ears are filled with the sounds of stomachs turning against themselves, of shallow breathing, of whispered bargains in the dark. The jailer no longer comes. The keys remain hanging on the peg near the stairs, untouched. It's said he starved in his quarters, surrounded by pickled eggs and wine he couldn't bring himself to share. In the dark, a noblewoman sits with her back against the wall, gown dirtied, pearls torn from her neckline, face sunken but proud. She feeds crumbs to a sparrow that found its way in through a high slit. The bird chirps, confused by its audience of ghosts. Once the castle was famed for its feast days. The king himself visited at Pentecost. But now, even the rats hesitate to enter the dungeon. A man named Willard clutches a loaf carved from plaster. He made it to remember baking. Each bite grinds his teeth, but gives him hope. Children, if any are left, do not speak. They curl against one another like embers trying to stay lit. A priest mutters scripture not for salvation, but rhythm. It helps him forget he hasn't walked in sunlight for 70 days. The noblewoman names the sparrow Saint Mercy. It stays for 3 nights. Then it vanishes. She continues feeding the air. Even hunger loses meaning after a while. There is only waiting, dreaming, rocking, remembering the smell of thyme and roasted goose. And when the walls tremble from above, no one startles. Whether death or deliverance, it is something different. And that, at least, is welcome.